I'm a honky tonk man. Ain't a crazy style. Love to give the girls the world to the music of an old jukebox.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, we're going back to Ohio. I have Tom Davis. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Charlie. Doing great.
It is a pleasure to get to talk to you again. We run into each other at different little conventions here and there and somewhere down the road, but I get to talk to you, just me and you tonight. Where are you in Ohio?
Actually, just outside of Dayton, Ohio. Which, Dayton's about 60 miles north of Cincinnati, straight up 75. And we're just a little bit offset from that towards the east, towards Columbus, but mostly in the suburbs of Dayton.
Yeah, unfortunately, living in Atlanta, I know 75 pretty well. So if I just get on 75 and go on up, I'll run into you at some point up there. Okay. So you are a full-time square dance caller. When did you start dancing?
I started dancing in 1974 and started calling in 1978. And of course, I was very fortunate, of being able to be part of the square dancing world when it was at its peak. 70s and 80s, it was really peaking out, and then people began to find different things, and technology got different, and began to sort of,
I was going to say technology kind of got in the way.
So, but no, I got to be part of the '83 National in Louisville. We had between 35 and 40,000 people there. Got to call in halls that had 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 people in the hall. So it was a real experience. And of course, getting to call at that time when during that time frame was difficult for a new caller getting into the program. It was difficult. You really had to be on your game, and you had to have the respect of the other callers. And if you didn't have the respect of the other callers, you didn't go anywhere. So a little bit different than it is today.
I think it really has changed a lot in all those respects that you're talking about. And I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed, because I've really started calling a lot more in the last 6, 7, 8 years. And I started about 12 years ago altogether. But it used to be and I just started another class with my club up here last week. When you get students in there, whether it be 5 students or 25 students, you always first thing, hey, has anybody ever square danced before? You'll always get hands that say, yeah, I danced in middle school. I did this, I've done it before. It's been 40 years. Right. Now you go in there with 20 students and you're like, hey, who's danced before? And not a hand will go up. They don't dance in schools anymore. You don't get that. It used to be, 10 years ago, people would come up, yeah, I used to square dance when I was a kid. You don't even hear it anymore because it's just gone from the schools. So that's certainly a hurdle that we have to get over now, because I'll have people call and ask me to do a one-night dance, and I have to explain to them that square dancing is not line dancing, because that's what they ultimately want. They're like, oh, I'm going to do it. So yeah, square dancing, and unfortunately, with technology, that's absolutely part of the reason I believe there's so much more to do.
Back in the 70s and 80s, square dancing pictured on TV also included clogging, and a lot of people added clogging and square dancing, thought that was the same thing.
That's right.
Which some of the figures were, but it's a totally different ballgame. And the Western style square dancing we do today is a lot different than what we call some of the mountain dancing or the barn dancing that you do, where you go learn 8, 10, 9, 10, 12 calls, and then you're dancing all night long.
Yeah, I talked to somebody, and it was obvious. It was even before the 70s, I'm sure. But square dancing back then, the caller and the dancers would memorize the dance. There was no sight calling or any of that. It was this is what we do for this song, and this is what we do for this song. And
a lot like line dancing.
Yeah, it is. You knew exactly what was coming. Right. The caller was just kind of there to make noise, because the dancers it was already memorized what they were doing. So it certainly changed in that respect. So when you started dancing, was there any individual, or what made you decide to try and give square dancing calling a chance? Nope, I think it froze up. Oh, you're back. You're back.
You're back.
Okay.
You're back.
So what I was saying was, what made you give square dancing a call when you decided to start calling? Was that an individual, or what made you think you wanted to get on the mic?
Well, I'd been dancing for about 2 or 3 years, and when I first got into it, I really didn't like it. When I first took lessons, I thought this is not for me. And the more I took lessons, and the more I was around people, and more I saw where we were headed, the more I liked it. And then clubs back then, of course, were big. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, so at that time, Louisville had 40 some.
Hang on, you still there?
We had an amateur night at our club, and that's how I got started.
Okay.
And what the caller would do would pick two members of the club, whether it be male or female, and would issue them a singing call that at the next dance, and we danced every first, third, and fifth Fridays. We would have to do that dance, and we would do that every 2 months. So,
okay.
And that's how I got started.
So, and a lot of people start off doing the singing calls and all that. Were there any influences when you started doing patter? Anybody working with you?
Well, like I say, at that time, being a new caller, you had to have a lot of help. You had to have a mentor. We had the Louisville Callers Association, or the Kentucky Callers Association at that time. You had 3 stages of membership that you had to go through, and it took you 3 to 5 years to gain the respect and the ability to be able to call at festivals locally. And you had to have a mentor caller. The mentor caller had to sign your application, and you had to work with that person. And my mentor was my club caller, and Jerry Barrett. And Jerry one night told me, after about maybe 5 or 6 nights that I had called a singing call, he come up to me and said, next time you call, I want you to call patter. And you're not going to call anymore until you learn to call patter. And that's how I got started on that. But I mean, at that time, I was so nervous when I'd get up to call, he'd have to put the needle on the record, because there's no way I could put the needle on the record, just skip right on across. But
I know what you're talking about.
But there was a lot of respect, and there was a lot of, I mean, callers did not have a problem telling you, this isn't your deal. You need to find something else or stay dancing. But being a caller is not what you need to do. And they had no problem doing that. And I had the first, to be a member of our association, we had to attend our own local caller school, which went for one day a week, actually, for 4 hours for 14 weeks. And once we graduated that, then before we could become a full member of our caller association, we had to attend the national caller school. So our caller association brought in Gary Shoemate, Bob Fisk at that time, and Wade Driver. And we did a week-long caller school in Louisville that I learned a ton. Those guys have forgotten more than I'll ever.
Oh yeah, I've had the opportunity to talk to them a couple times at different conventions or whatever, and I just can't imagine having all that in my head, as much stuff as they know, and as much stuff as they've forgotten at this point.
Right.
Just so much. So now, and that's changed too. Now you can just go get a microphone, and if you can find somebody to let you do a singing call, you're a caller.
Basically,
there's no requirement that you go to a school or you have a mentor. If you want to get better, or be good at it, in anything, you've got to have somebody to talk to you and all that. And I ask a lot of people now, and you're a big part of the GS side. So the caller coaching, when did you get into that?
Well, I started doing some work on my certification, probably 10 years ago.
Okay.
And started doing, when I was booking festivals, they would ask you, do you want to do a caller school, or do you want to do a caller workshop while you're here? And, we'll allot you a couple hours to do that. So I started doing that. And I like to teach. I like to teach square dancing. I'm not a teacher by profession, but I do like to teach. And, but, I see so much that people are missing as callers. And the difference between a good caller and one who's not there yet, but working on it, sometimes it's a fine line.
Oh, sure.
and trying to help them find that fine line. You know, teaching callers is like teaching dancers. Everybody has a different learning ability and a different way that they learn things, and sometimes you have to find different things to say to get them to understand what you want them to do. And you know, we're all like that. So it has really worked well for me because I'm still working on my accreditation. Hopefully this year I will have my 200 hours that it
Oh,
takes to
fantastic.
start working on your accreditation before you
Okay.
get tested and start all the things you have to do.
I
So
know it is quite the process. I've never really looked much into it, but to be caller's coach, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I'll tell you, for the first 4 or 5 years, I was working with a couple callers in this area. A gentleman by the name of Ray Monty, who passed away 2 years ago, I think. And he'd been calling for, I don't know, 60 years, and
right,
a wealth of knowledge. And hey, look for this, do this, memorize this, different things. But when I started going to the GSI schools, or some of these individual schools, just phenomenal. And you pick up so much more, and especially with the GSI, you've got 40 or more, people working with you. And just like you
right.
said, everybody is going to learn something different. Some people you can walk up and say, hey, this is a get out, just use it. And they're going to remember it. I am never remembering that. I have to have somebody stand next to me and go, do you see that girl right there, Charlie? That's who you got to get over there.
Right.
And, something like that, I can get that. So do you have any advice for people that are just starting out, or people that have been calling?
Well, if I'd had to tell any one new caller one thing, and that is be easy and keep it simple.
Okay.
I see so many new callers get out here and try to create good choreography, but what they're doing is they're creating choreography that the dancers can't handle. And then, I had talking about stories when I was learning to call. We had a guy in the Louisville area by the name of Bill Zambella. And Bill Zambella was at that time was on the road. He was considered a national caller. He was a retired Army man, and that's what he did for his side living. And so I asked Bill one night, because it was hard to get information out of the older callers because they didn't want you around. Some of them did. So I asked Bill one night. I said, Bill, what do I need to do? Tell me, what steps do I need to take? And he said, put his arm around me. We were off the side of the stage, and he said, Tom, he said, you need to go to the 5 and 10 cent store down the street here. You need to buy you a bag of marbles. And he says, you need to put your mouth full of marbles. And every time you make a call, you spit a marble out. If you've lost your marbles, you become a caller. And those were the very words he said to me.
No,
And,
that's fantastic.
And that stuck with me because it's true. I mean, you have to take everything that you know and try to figure out how to manipulate it to get somebody to understand something.
Yeah.
And dancers as much as callers,
Yeah.
But I have learned one thing in this career is that if you're honest with your dancers, if you treat your dancers like people, you give them a good time, they're paying for fun. They're paying for entertainment. They're not paying to find out what I know. They're paying to find out what I can do to let them have a good 2-hour dance. And that's what I've always tried to live by.
Awesome.
Yeah, I try to find that medium. The hardest thing that we have to do as callers is go into a floor, especially one that we don't know, and find out what you can get away with and where you have to stop.
Sure.
And I think a lot of callers don't know where to stop, and I think that's what causes problems down the road, because you have a equilibrium there that you've got to go, because you've got the not so trained dancer, and then you've got the highly trained dancer, and you've got to find that happy medium to keep the other guy that's over experienced happy, and keep the guy that's under experienced, from walking out the door. So it's a tough challenge.
It is. When a club calls you in to do something and you've never been there before, you know 2 couples there, and you've got 3 squares, let's say 4 squares, whatever. You got to have that first or second tip to just kind of feel it out and just be super basic to see, who can do, fan to top, because it's something that's not called, or you're going to break them down. And that's the problem you run into when you go to like a national convention and you've got 10, 12, 15 squares in a plus hall, doesn't mean they're all great plus dancers. So you got to be careful if you haven't watched the caller before you and you want to walk out there and, hey, we're going to do some half sashayed stuff, and you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're
So,
get that. Yeah, you're right. You know, you've got to pay attention to what you're doing. And I try to use a call every dance, that especially if I'm doing a dance in an area where I'm not well known or where I don't know people. You know, try to find what I call the floor leveler. And what I'll do is I'll pull a gimmick call out of the pocket that nobody knows. And then that makes everybody equal because nobody knows. Okay. So everybody at that point in time is equal on the floor. And then I know what I can get away with, what I can't.
Very nice. Okay. Well, in that respect, if somebody hires you to do a dance, how do you go into programming it with your music and all? What do you like to do?
Well, you know, I've always considered myself a high energy caller. You know, I've worked around, you know, Jerry and Tony and all those guys because we were part of Mid America for 17 years and we all called together at that time. And you know, I've always been sort of I like the high energy. I like people to come in, have a good time. I want them to go out the door having a good time. I want them to remember that last song I did. That's what I want to hear them singing when they go out the door. Yep. But you know, it depends on your crowd. You know, you got to, again, that first tip is going to, you can write your program down, you can have it all lined out, but that first tip may cause you to throw the paper away and then reschedule everything because it ain't going to work. Yep. So, I mean, you go into a hall where you're hoping to have high energy and your youngest dancer is 82, you're going to have a problem. So, I mean, you just got to take a little bit at a time. But I do like to do the systematic thing that we teach is the fact that you find an opener that's somewhat high energy, and you try to build your program, and then you take your program back down and take them out the door. Very nice. You know, I try to save my best songs and choreography that I do for the middle of the dance and at the end of the dance.
What's some of your favorite singing calls for that?
Oh, well, I've got a ton of I like gospel songs. I really do like gospel music. I think it's good music. Of course, I was raised in the 60s and 70s and 80s, so a lot of that music I like, and especially the 60s. You know, I really like a lot of 60s songs that's been put out. You know, I buy them all, and I don't record on. I record on a small label called Golden Eagle Records that Joe Goins owns. I've recorded because I've known Joe for years, and but I've not called or recorded on any major label.
Well, and I ask everybody too, how high do you call level wise?
I go to C1.
C1? Okay.
Yeah, Jack Platties and I share a C1 group here in the Cincinnati area. Okay. We have a group that meets every second Saturday of the month. And we dance for 4 hours. We dance 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon.
And that's down here. There's one club that I know of, Hotlanta. We talked about earlier. They can dance up into the C1, I believe. And
I met them in Tennessee at the Tennessee State Convention, and when I was calling C1 down there, and those people are a blast.
And remind me, because we talked before we started recording. When are you calling in Hotlanta again?
I think it's September. Hold on, I'll tell you in just a minute.
Okay.
My calendar up on the other screen over here.
So I'm definitely going to make a point to come over there for that.
Oh yeah, we'll go out to dinner. I'm coming out. I'm probably going to spend the night and go back home on Sunday or.
Call me ahead of time. We'll go out and have some dinner. We'll do that. That's outstanding.
Okay, September 14th.
September 14th.
14th.
I'll put it on the calendar. It's awesome, Tom.
Yeah, that's the same day we do our C1 group. So Jock will be doing that by himself.
Okay. So now, you've traveled quite a bit, I'm quite sure. Where are some of the places you've been that kind of stick out to you that you liked, you want to go back to, or anything like that?
Well, you know, I like Tennessee. I go to Tennessee quite often. We go to the Tennessee State Convention. First time I went to that convention, actually worked at that convention, was 8 years ago. But it took me 4 years to get my calendar arranged so I could go.
Okay.
And, but I like going to Tennessee. They usually have 1,100 people to attend that convention for that weekend, and they dance. They dance all the way up to the sea level, and they're good dancers. There's not a paid caller in the group. Everybody is a volunteer, and you work with some really good people down
Tennessee is probably one of my favorites.
there.
And I've been to a handful. Georgia, because I'm in Georgia, obviously.
Right.
I like going there. They bounce around to where they have the dance. But Tennessee is a great place in Gatlinburg, locked in there. So love going over there.
Of course, I've spent most of my life calling in Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois. So like I said, I lived in Chicago for 8 years. So when I moved up to Chicago, I had to reinvent myself. There was people up there that knew me, but not a lot of clubs that ever danced to me before. And Bobby Pointer and Bob's son, Bobby, was one of the ones that helped me get known in that area. And every time I go up there, I still go up and if I'm doing a dance, Bobby tries to put something together for he and I. And
Okay.
we'll do something for Saturday afternoon. Sometimes we get Sandy involved. And so,
Very nice.
we'll do an advanced challenge Saturday afternoon or something like that.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and I've had the opportunity to meet Sandy Bryant one time, and I'm going to have her on the podcast eventually. But yeah, and Bobby Pointer, I've heard the name before, don't know him, but I'd love to talk to him also.
He would be a really good one. Now he's known as, his father is Bob Pointer, who's in Florida, and of course I knew Bob before I ever knew Bobby. But Bobby, grew up in this industry with his dad being a national caller at the time, and so you're talking about telling stories. I'm sure Bobby could rattle off a bunch.
Outstanding.
And a very talented individual. Bobby's very talented.
Now, outside of square dancing, what do you like to do just for leisure or for fun?
Well,
or is it square dancing?
Well, it's been square dancing for quite a while, but we do. We have several square dancing couples that we hang around with, and we play games. We love to play board games. We love to play card games and this type of stuff. I played golf for about 10 years, and the guy that got me into it said it's very relaxing. It's very, I was more stressed after playing golf than I was working 40 hours. So I said, I don't need this. And but no, we hang around with a lot of our square dance friends.
Okay.
And, I have a daughter that lives down in Paducah, Kentucky, and my granddaughter's down there, and she's on a cheer team, so we've been going and watching her do her thing. And I have a son that still lives in Louisville. My stepdaughter, my wife's daughter, lives in Seattle, Washington.
Wow.
And matter of fact, my wife's going out and see her while I'm in CALLERLAB.
So we're when's the last time you played golf, you think?
Oh geez. Putt or real golf?
Real golf.
Real golf. It's probably been 20 years since I've been. I mean, my clubs are still sitting out here in the garage.
I was gonna say, when you come into Hotlanta, you come in a day early or come in that afternoon. I got a course that I play every Friday afternoon.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't swung a club, like say, in 20 years.
Okay.
Every time I hit a putt course now, I play putt a lot.
Well, there's plenty of that in Gatlinburg at the Tennessee Convention. Right. You don't get to go far to find that. Oh my God, that's good stuff.
But I was raised on a farm, so I'm just an old farm boy.
Okay. So raised on a farm, did you work on the farm?
Yep, sure did.
What kind of stuff did you do?
We had a dairy farm, and we raised we had 40 head of cattle, and then we had 200 acres of corn and about another 20 acres of tobacco at that time.
Great.
Which was big subsidy at that time.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That when we were talking, that's one of the main reasons I was telling you I started the doing the podcast is so one, it turned out that I use it for a caller school for myself, talking to a lot of y'all about calling and little things like that, because a lot of people listening, they don't really care about the programming, but the callers do, and I want to hear how you do it, that type of thing. But as far as that, I started doing it so we can tell your stories, and you don't know, because I told people that if somebody hires you for a dance, you come in there and they might have heard of you, but they know you for about an hour and a half, 2 hours up on the microphone, and I don't have the gift of telling stories. I'll listen to some of you guys. You get up there, you tell a story about the song you're about to sing or something like that. And I just get up there and I'm like, all right, here's the next song. Let's go, So I wanted people to get to know you. So yeah, I had no idea you grew up on a farm. That's a great story there.
We spent a lot of time, my parents we bowled a lot. If I had a hobby to go to today, I'd go back to bowling.
Okay.
But my parents bowled in 3 leagues, and when I was got out of college and in high school, and even when I got married, I was bowling 3 or 4 nights a week. But I can tell it in my shoulders now.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Throwing that ball. But once I got into square dancing and once I got into calling and began to make a little name for myself and move around, that sort of took over. So I had to make a choice to give up things. Yep. And the one thing that's been good to me, the one thing that's brought me more wealth, not in money, but in friends and family.
Sure. Yep. No, and I've brought it up several times on the podcast that I've been doing. As a whole, the callers, men and women, for the most part, there's not a nicer group of people, more helpful. Right. I know when you were coming up, it was a little different. You had to go through everything just to be considered a caller. Right. Now I could walk in when I first started. I could walk in anywhere. I could walk into a convention, never heard of the person before, walk up and I see them and I'm like, hey, how did you do that? And hey, let me talk to you. Come here, you go sit down, and it's always been that way, which is right. It's a great community. It really is.
Well, I mean, we none of us have anything that we can lock behind a safe and say, that's mine. And you can't use it because, I mean, I got it from somebody else in most cases, so it's, it's a sharing problem. I call it research.
Yeah. I think everybody pretty much calls it research. And I'll tell you, I was on the cruise a couple of weeks ago when I'm at a convention, I'll take my phone and I'll set it up on top of a speaker somewhere and I'll go out and dance and I'll go home for the next 2 weeks. I'm just sitting there, pause, write it down, pause, write it down and then working it out with checkers and going, wow, I never saw that. So it's really a good time there. So you were going to be at CALLERLAB.
Yep.
Now, what committee are you? You were told, what are you doing at CALLERLAB right now?
Well, I'm on the board. I'm on the board of governors. And then I'm also chairman of the Plus Committee.
Okay. Now, the board of governors, we know what that is. On the Plus Committee, what do y'all do on the committees?
Well, I mean, we look at the Plus program. Right now, we just finished. And matter of fact, I'm going to be putting the vote out on that tomorrow once I get it written up. Patricia sent it to me today. We were looking at changing the definition or expanding the definition of anything in spread to include tidal waves and this type of thing for more or less moving it on up to the Advanced and Challenge program. Okay. So that the rule, because a lot of times these committees will look at the rules and the definitions and the mainstream and plus, and then determine, well, we'd like to use that here, but we'd like to do it this way. So can we alter the definition here and go ahead and agree on it so that we can legally do it when we get to these other levels? So we were looking at just sort of tweaking the anything at spread call to include tidal waves, offset waves, this type of thing. So, and it was a close vote. I'll just as soon as I send out the email, I'll call you and tell you what the vote was.
That'd be awesome. Thanks, sir. All right. And
we also look at we call them the triennials, where we go through and we review the whole program. What does the mainstream program could they utilize on our program to make their program better? What can the advanced program drop back down to the plus program to make our program more interesting? When you look at families of calls, such as all 8 movements in the advanced program, Well, we have a plus call called All Eight Spin the Top.
Right.
So, you look at those and you say, well, why is it All Eight here? And why can't we do the other All Eight stuff that's in the advanced program? Or why don't we just move that up and get it off our program so that we're not tantalizing advancers? So there's a lot of different things that we look at, and the committees work together to try to formulate that. Now you're going to hear something if you haven't already, at the convention next week that's hopefully is going to shed a whole different light on our both programs, the mainstream and the plus program.
Okay.
So keep your ears open.
I am looking forward to that. I started going to CALLERLAB, I don't know, 8 years ago, I think. And it's done wonders for my calling and just the networking, getting to talk to people and all that stuff. And something that's overlooked, I think, sometimes are the dances at night that they put together, whoever it may be, a record label or whatever.
Right.
One is the dancing is fantastic because it's typically callers and their partners. And so the dancing is a pretty good level. So you get a lot out of CALLERLAB, and I try and tell that to all my friends that don't get to travel, that are callers.
Right.
You should go to CALLERLAB, or at least hit a GSI school if you're going to the nationals.
I mean, the GSI school is, to me, is the ticket, because it's 40 hours, or for almost 40 hours of work that you don't pay nothing for. But you pay for an admission into the National Square Dance Convention. I mean, you look at the prices of some of these other schools out there at $1,500, $1,000, $800 for. I mean, you can't go wrong. There's just no way.
No, you can't. And when you have as many instructors as that you'll run through in 3 or 4 days, it's just amazing. And a lot of guys that I consider friends now, I met because they were teaching or working with GSI. Or something like that, because you get that one-on-one, because hey, you catch them on the side, just like I was saying earlier, walk over to them after they've said something and say, can you tell me what you just said again, or sit there and write it down,
Right.
So there's a lot there.
It makes a big difference.
It does. It absolutely does.
But see, I've been on the both sides of the fence, because I was a member of CALLERLAB when I first started calling. And then the BMI and ASCAP came into effect. Well, at that time, I barely had a pot to use the restroom in. But so, you're looking at ways to make sure that you can financially do this and still, keep a happy family at home. So then the American Caller Association came on the scene. And then I took my direction, because at that time it was like $50 cheaper to join them. So I got into that. I wound up being president of that organization for 12 years.
Okay. I did not know that.
And then I tried to, their whole advertisement was, come and join us. It's cheaper. We're not going to make you go to convention. At that point in time, it used to be that you had to make a convention every 3 years to stay in CALLERLAB. Okay. So you go spend, $1,500 for a week, every 3 years, cuts into your budget. So. Sure. And of course, the American Caller Association advertised, well, we don't do that. We don't even have conventions. We have meetings, regional meetings every so often. And at that time, it was good. But as it went on, it became a more of a competitive type of membership between CALLERLAB and the ACA. Sure. When I was president, I tried to meet with Elmer when he was general chairman of CALLERLAB. I was fortunate enough to sit down, and Patty Green and I had a long conversation. We had just about put our heads together on how to put these associations back together. And then evidently the American Caller Association found out what I was doing. And well, you see where I am today.
Okay.
And I had joint membership with both of them for 7 or 8 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
I paid dues at both.
Yeah, I think when I was starting out, the main reason I got into CALLERLAB is the gentleman, Ray Monty, that had worked with me. He was CALLERLAB. And I don't know how many conventions he went to in all his years, but he was like, hey, you have to have CALLERLAB. One, at the time, it was for the insurance. Right. He was like, hey, you got to have this for your insurance. And then it was, hey, you got to have the BMI and ASCAP. And so of course, I got in there, and I can't remember. I don't know if Vernon Jones was running. It was in charge at that point, or because I remember Patty Green. But I went to it and I was like, wow, okay. The convention sold me.
Oh yeah,
I want to come to this every year.
right.
So I don't know how involved I could have been if there was no convention involved. So I get a lot out of that.
Well, I mean, everything that we do runs through it. I mean, ACA doesn't use any different calls than CALLERLAB. It was just just something else to offer.
Sure.
Everything has to have. You got to have a black and white. To be able to.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah. So, but I have no regrets. And people in CALLERLAB know where my stand is, and matter of fact, my name was still on the website as the president of CALLERLAB when I was voted in the Board of Governors. And that was brought up during my and I said, I promise you, I'm not on there. So I called Matt Kletzen. I said, tell these people I'm not on because they hadn't changed the website.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, so we've got National Convention coming up, CALLERLAB coming up, and of course you're going to be at Tennessee. I don't think I'm going to make Tennessee this year because I believe South Carolina is 2 weeks behind.
Yeah.
Tennessee, and I had to figure out which one. I can't do more than one in a month, and so I've been to. I love Tennessee. It's a fantastic convention. I love the setting in Gatlinburg, and the hall is phenomenal. But I was like, hey, let's go to South Carolina this year, just check it out. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some of them folks over there.
Well, good.
How much traveling do you do now?
Well, I'm doing more.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing more is because I turned 70 in January, and the company knows I'm going to go to part-time retirement in June, and hopefully by the end of the year I'll be totally retired from my work, from the job.
Yeah, and just full-time traveling. I hear you.
Yeah. So, and of course, my wife is still working. She's a speech therapist, and she still works. She'll have several more years to go, but we can still do stuff.
Okay.
She goes with him most times. She's been dancing for a long time. So
I was gonna add so she dances.
Yeah, she's been dancing since she was 8 or 9 years old, and she danced out in the Vancouver area and North California, Washington State, Oregon area with teens out there. So
nice. Okay.
Yeah, so she's been dancing for quite a while. You and I both know that in this type of business, it takes a special person to understand what we do, and if they don't dance, they have no idea what we
do. I agree. And because my wife's been a part of it the whole time. But that's her little thing when she talks to people when we go to conventions. She says, he wasn't a square dance caller when I met him. Right. So she's not always thrilled about, hey, let's pack up and go to North Carolina for the weekend,
Right.
and do this for a square dance thing. But she does dance on occasion. Her parents actually got us into it, so it's kind of her fault. And I will tell you, Tim Mariner taught me to square dance. My son, it was 30 years ago now. So he was just starting out back then. And I had so much going on back then. I asked him after we took classes with him, I said, hey, how can I do what you're doing? And he gave me a cassette tape with his singing calls. And he said, go learn these. And of course, I never went and learned them. And he only taught classes. He wasn't a club caller for us. So I never really saw him until I started going to like the Georgia convention. But of course, then he passed away, which is a shame. But
person.
Oh, and but my wife, so she kind of got into it, and so she kind of got a little spoiled. She likes the really good callers, so she doesn't come to my dances yet. And so she'll go to conventions and things like that. But just like you said, I mean, your wife's been dancing for so long, and she's known you as that.
Right.
So that's big. You got to have, whether it's a partner, a spouse, or whatever, that supports you and just says, hey, go do what you got to do. She told me last weekend, Jet Roberts was over here in Atlanta, and she had worked all week and babysitting for our grandson. And she's like, I just can't go anymore tonight. And she said, but you need to go over and see Jet. So I went over there and I danced to Jet and we hung out and it was a good time. So she understands.
It does. I mean, it helps. You know, it really does. Now, we have some friends that are outside the dancing activity.
Okay.
And, you know, and we've tried to get them into it, but we respect the right that they're just not going to do it, you know. But we still have the friends out there. We have church friends who are not square dancers. So,
You know, and
most of our time is spent with the friends that do dance.
Yeah. Of course, at work, I haven't retired yet, you know, and I've been trying for years. Some of these guys, mostly guys, police officers that I work with, I'm like, hey, come on, I'm doing classes, man. Come on over, you know, check it. And they're like, nah, Charlie. You know, they'll tell me, hey, let me see one of your YouTube videos. And they'll all sit there and look at the YouTube videos. And I'm like, I'm doing classes next week. And they're like, no, we're not coming to that, Charlie. So
I've got, you know, I've met a lot of police officers in Square. My daughter was a police officer and retired as chief.
I did not know that. Okay.
And she was in Paducah or in the Eddyville area, and she was chief of the Eddyville police department when she retired. But she worked her way up from the ground floor. When she left high school, she joined the Marines, and her goal has always been to get a criminal justice degree and become a police officer and work for the FBI. And she's done all that. And now she's mayor.
No kidding. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So she's gone all the way up the ladder. So she's got her retirement from being on the police force of the Kentucky State or through the Kentucky Retirement Fund. But she's also mayor of the Lyon County area where she lives.
Oh gosh, that's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm doing this, man. That's awesome. Well, if you can ever get me a challenge coin or a patch from her from up there, I'd love that. I'll bring you some of mine.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring some to CALLERLAB with you.
I'll remind her, see if she'll mail me something.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I probably won't see her till when I get back from CALLERLAB during Easter.
And well, we'll run into each other in Wisconsin at the Nationals.
Well,
so,
that's for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Tom, it's been a pleasure, buddy. I'm going to see you at CALLERLAB next weekend.
Yep.
The way it looks now. And this podcast is going to come out probably the week after. Because I got a couple more that I just recorded. Matt McGovern's coming out this Friday. Of course, by the time they see this, it'll already be out. Man, I appreciate this, Tom. I tell you, I remember. I think I've met you at Gatlinburg a couple times at the Tennessee convention, but I really remember, and I want to say it was you. Now that you brought it up earlier, at the GSI school a couple times. You've done a class where I was sitting in there and probably didn't even realize I was sitting back there. But you said earlier you try and finish a dance and you want somebody whistling the song that you finished with.
Right.
And I have told that to so many people when I'm just talking to them in person or whatever, that I said, you know, I've always heard that you want to hear somebody whistling the song or singing the last song that you did.
Right.
And then, maybe you said that at GSI. I don't know where I got it from.
I don't know if I did or not.
I don't know where I got it from, but I have told that story. So, man, that's awesome. I want to thank you for all you do for the callers with the school and the caller, and good luck on that, getting your accreditation.
It's a lot of work. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping this time next year I'll have it, but
once you get that and you put together a school in Ohio, I'll come up there to Ohio. I'll be the first one to come to it.
You'll be the first one I'll invite.
Awesome, Tom. Hey, brother, it's good talking to you. I'll see you next weekend.
Will do, buddy. Thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thanks. Appreciate it, Charlie.
Tom, good talking to you, buddy.
Thanks.
When my money's all gone.